Welcome to the U World Order Showcase podcast, where we feature life, health, and transformational coaches being the change they seek in the world. If you'd like to be featured on our podcast to share what you're contributing to making the world a better place for us all, please go to www.jointheuworldorder.com. Be sure to like and follow our podcast for the latest episodes. Hi, and welcome to the U World Order Showcase podcast. I'm your host, Jill Hart, and with us today is Emma Leivesley. She helps stressed out doctors, nurses, and allied professionals find work-life balance and calm through well-being and burnout coaching. Welcome to the show, Emma. It's really great to have a chance to chat with you.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I think we'll let the audience know that you are based in the UK, so all of the conversation that we have, we talk to people from all over the world, but because we're going to be talking about doctors and nurses and the medical community, I think it's important that people realize where in the world you're located in order for them to have a frame of reference for the conversation that we're going to have. So tell us your story. How did you get started doing burnout coaching for medical professionals?
I've been a hypnotherapist for 10 years and I've run my own private practice. In addition to that, I've been working for the NHS, which is our health service in mental health. I work for a GP practice, so I work with general practitioners. And at the moment, I've been noticing that the medical staff are very stressed, they're suffering from a lot of burnout. And it's really difficult seeing these people who I work with who are really kind, compassionate, wonderful people who really care about their patients, struggling as much as they are. So I then went and did a course qualifying to be a coach and found it really powerful. And I've always been a fan of mindfulness and found it really beneficial for myself. And it was then that I decided I'm going to help healthcare professionals. And from researching, I've found that this is a worldwide problem. People in health profession across the world are really struggling right now. There's a lot of understaffing, so there's not enough staff. A lot of people are leaving the profession as well. And in addition to that, there's more demand from patients. We've generally got an aging population, so that's causing a lot more demand. And also, patients are demanding more from medical staff as well. And there's a problem with people expecting things just to be fixed rather than being like taking precautions themselves and taking responsibility for their own health. And I read a quite terrifying statistic that in the UK, doctors are twice as likely to die from suicide than the general population. And I've looked at how that looks across the world, and it's very similar across the board. So I think that with doctors, there's this tendency to be, I'm okay, I've got to be okay, and not acknowledging when they're struggling, which is something that I want to change. I want to take that stigma away and allow healthcare professionals to feel that they can talk about how they're feeling. And the reason why I chose the stress and burnout is because I've been through it myself. So back in February 2014, I was teaching at a college and I woke up one morning and it was a horrible grey Monday morning, raining, and I just opened my eyes and thought, I've got nothing. There's literally nothing. I don't feel anything. I feel like someone's scooped out my soul. And I did what the only thing that I could think of to do, which was to call my boss and to say, I'd rather kill myself than come into work today. And she was saying, well, you need to go and see a doctor, get some help. So I was like, okay. And it took me 3 years to recover from that. And a lot of that is because I didn't have the tools and techniques that I do now. Because after that, I then went on to study psychology and psychiatry. And I really developed tools that really work for people in managing stress so the burnout doesn't happen in the first place, and also in recovering from burnout. So there is difference between stress and burnout, and a lot of the time when people are talking about burnout, they actually mean stress. Um, Burnout is when you get to the point where it's a lot harder to come back from. So with burnout, I'm more prevention is better than cure. Um, so basically, stress is something that we all get. We need it to motivate us to do anything. So we've got a normal level of stress, which is called eustress, which motivates us to get out of bed, gives us the motivation to have careers and just kind of make the best out of life. Without it, we wouldn't get much done at all. And then you've got the unhelpful stress, which is where we feel like we don't have the resources to cope with it. Sometimes that can be in our heads when, in fact, we do have the resources to cope with it. Other times it's because demands are too much. So the World Health Organization, they define burnout as unmanaged stress that's been going on for quite a long period of time. But what they say that burnout is specific to the workplace. So if you've got this chronic stress and you're not putting it down, you're not resting, then that leads to burnout. Now, if you can go on holiday and feel refreshed and come back, then it's stress. With burnout, that wouldn't happen. Stress affects you more physically. So it causes increased heart rate, raises your blood pressure. It is very dangerous. My dad, um, he's a retired occupational therapist, and he had a heart attack that was mainly due to workplace stress. So working in that healthcare environment actually caused him to have a heart attack. So it's really important to manage this. Um, it can cause exhaustion as well, and just not feeling like you're able to cope. You can also have angry outbursts and things like that, and difficulty managing emotions. With burnout, it's more of a problem mentally. So it's that mental exhaustion, feeling like you've got absolutely nothing to give to the world. And also, you can feel resentful. And in healthcare, that can come out as being resentful to your colleagues, but also resentful to the people that you're looking after as well. Um, and in addition to that, you can feel complete apathy, like you don't care anymore. So obviously, that's a difficult place to be in if your job is caring for people. So that's why I always really try and get people to see that they're not going to be able to help other people if they don't prioritize their own self-care. So that's another big thing that I really drive with people that I work with, that it's important not just for them but to everybody else as well. But also I think there's this rhetoric around the world, especially after COVID, that healthcare professionals are some kind of heroes, angels, like not actually referring to them as people. And they are people who are doing a very difficult job. So rather than trying to live up to this expectation of being a hero, it's about saying, actually, do you know what? I'm a human being. I'm more than just my job, which a lot of people can struggle with, especially resident doctors, because they're very overworked. They work a lot of hours, and there's that people pleasing tendency and caring tendency. If people can't get shifts covered, they will ask them, "Can you do an extra shift?" And they go, "Yes." So setting boundaries is really important as well. Um, and not
Medical
working yourself.
community, I'm
Yeah.
not sure how it is in the UK, but just the way medicine has been set up for training doctors doesn't
Mm,
really make it easy for them to set boundaries. Like, you talk
no.
about they take the extra shift. Well, they already work long
Yeah.
shifts to begin with, like
Yeah.
24 hour shifts,
Mm,
which is
yeah.
crazy to me. I mean, you're looking at these people and life depends on them being able to make
Hmm.
really good decisions, and yet we're working them uh, around the clock, which is you can't stay sharp for more than a limited amount of time. And 8 to 10 hours kind of stretches it. Even truck drivers, there's a limit to how long they
Yeah.
will allow somebody to be a truck driver and
Yeah.
drive each day. And but the medical community doesn't seem to think that's a big deal.
Yeah, and I think that's really important as well because I've known in the UK we've stopped calling them junior doctors, they're called resident doctors now because it implied that they were somehow inferior to the consultant level doctors. And some of those doctors have told me that they've done stints of working for like months without having a day off. And that's like, how can you have a work-life balance when you're working like that? And is it any wonder that doctors are ending their own lives at the rate that they are doing at the moment?
And then they're saddled with so much debt to get to
Mm,
that level that they're really
yeah.
trapped. They don't have any
Mm,
choice. They get there, and now they have all of this education debt that they have to pay off. And it
yeah.
costs, in the United States, it costs at least $350,000 to become a doctor, just
Mm,
for the education part of it, and upwards from there. And it takes years in order
mm,
to pay that debt off and actually start, making money as in your profession, because they
yeah.
don't get paid that much. They make
Yeah.
maybe 150, 200,000 a year.
Mm, yeah. And in the UK, the NHS has just had a pay rise. So that's taken a little bit of the pressure off, but not everybody's getting the pay rise. The place where I work isn't getting the pay rise. So there's a lot of it, it's not equal as well. Some places will pay more than others, and it tends to be the places where patients with not a lot of money go to that have got the tired, frazzled, burned out doctors. However, people with a lot of money can afford to go to places where the doctors have got a bit more of a balance, um, which is not right in my opinion. But yeah, and I think more needs to be done. Obviously, I can't change the way that the world works when it comes to the medical profession. All I can change is how people cope with that. So one thing I'm big on is little, like the small steps that you can do that don't take a lot of time, that that build up healthy habits throughout the day.
And allow them to actually stay in the profession that they're in,
Yeah.
and thrive in it. It's really pretty amazing what you're doing. Do you work one-on-one with coaches? Do you work online? How does that, not coaches, doctors, medical professionals? How does
Mhm.
that look?
Yeah, so I work online, um, and I do one-to-one sessions with people, but I also do groups as well. So I've recently just finished a Calm Camp, which is a 4-week stress management program. Majority of people there were junior doctors, sorry, resident doctors, as we're calling them now, and nurses. The nurses are struggling too.
Mhm.
Um, so that was really good, and it was good to see people realise that they're not on their own, and they were talking to other people in a similar situation to them as well. And everyone said that they felt a lot calmer after the 4 weeks, and that had a lot of mindfulness embedded, but also we were looking at work-life balance and the mindset aspect of it as well. I disagree with the World Health Organization's definition that it's just based on workplace. We're not compartmentalized at all. Mm. So it's not just what's going on at work, it's what's going on at home. And if you've got a job where you're called away a lot, you're working long hours, that is going to affect your life at home. But one thing I learned from my own experience, it wasn't just the being overworked. It was also certain people that were involved. So I had a friend, as I thought he was at the time, who was very toxic, and it was basically emotional abuse where he would put me down all the time, say things like, "Oh, you get very angry all the time," and I think people need to be aware of toxic people like that in their lives as well, because that you start to believe other people's opinion of yourself. So looking at relationships that you have outside of work needs to be done. And if you are a doctor and you've got someone in your life that really doesn't get it, that you have to do these hours, you have to do this work, you're going to be very tired when you're at home, then maybe you want to either limit the amount of time that you spend with them or find people that understand, because that's going to have a big impact. The feeling of guilt, you don't need that on the top of everything else that you're dealing with as well. But a lot of it is what's going on in the mind as well. So it's about your belief that you can manage. If you feel like you're totally overwhelmed and you believe that, oh, I can't cope with that, I can't do this, that's going to have an impact too. And the one thing that I do is, because a lot of workplaces have these well-being courses and they're all well and good, but they're just not realistic for people who work in healthcare. They don't have that luxury of time. So you've got to make it actionable and actually realistic. So I reality check absolutely everything with my clients. Like, is this actually feasible? Can you do this? And the goal setting with self-care has to be not overwhelming as well. So it's got to be simple steps that you can work into everyday life. So, for example, I'll look at things like searching for glimmers, which is the opposite of triggers. So, things that make us feel connected to other people and make us feel good. So, I outline like glimmer seeking behavior that they can engage in. So, that's things like going to a colleague, making somebody laugh, noticing when someone pays you a compliment, and if a patient thanks you, really cling on to that. Because a lot of the time, when you've got frustrated patients that don't like the waiting times, that don't like the way the service is being run, you tend to remember the complaints more than you remember the patients that have said, actually, thank you so much for that. You've really helped me. So I think that paying attention to the little positive things that happen throughout the day is really important. And being able to let go of the negative things as well, because compassion fatigue is basically, it's guaranteed. If you work in healthcare, you are at some point going to experience compassion fatigue, and that is caused by witnessing human suffering repeatedly. It's sometimes called vicarious trauma. So if you think of somebody working in a hospital, especially in an emergency department, the amount of things that they must see. I know
Mhm.
from my own experiences working in mental health, I've seen a lot of unseeable things. And that can really, if you don't get support with that, can impact your mental health really negatively. But also people who work in fields like mental health, I get quite a lot of mental health nurses. It's not just what you're seeing, it's what you're hearing. So some of the stories that you hear from people, you've got to see 10, 12 patients in a day, and then you get home and you've then got to process all of that stuff that people have been telling you. It's actually, it can be quite horrific. And a lot of people outside of healthcare don't realize that this is quite difficult to live with, but you do it because you want to help people. And I think definitely people in charge take advantage of that, because you've got these people that really want to help people. That's why they've gone into the job. Okay, we'll just keep putting more and more on them, ask more and more from them, and they're just going
It's
to say
just
yes.
the sheer number of people that they have to see in a week is
Mm,
crazy. I mean, you're
yeah.
talking hundreds of people that will
Mm,
flow through a doctor's um exam room
hmm.
in a week. And
Yeah.
each of those hundreds of people have a problem. And
Mm,
for some of them, it's a critical problem.
hmm.
And some of them, it's not just critical, but it's end of life sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And
Mm,
to constantly to be barraged with that kind of input, it's
mm,
got it. How could it not take a toll on a human being,
yeah.
another human being?
Yeah.
It's not too unlike war when you're
Yeah.
seeing people being shot, but it, there's just no bullets that you can
Mm,
see. They're invisible
yeah.
bullets.
Yeah. And I think this is something that's not really appreciated enough.
Hmm.
Uh, and there's that expectation that people have of themselves. Well, this is my job. This is what I do. And
And
it's,
then you add
yeah,
people in that come and they won't take responsibility for their own health. They just want the doctor to wave his magic wand and make you suddenly better, and you don't
yeah.
have to change anything in your lifestyle.
Hmm.
It's like,
Yeah.
well, that's not
Yeah.
realistic, but we've been trained to believe that that's their power.
Yeah. And again, it's that unrealistic belief of doctors being some kind of hero, magician, angel, and in reality, they're human beings. And if you don't take responsibility for your own health, then you've got to live with the consequences of that. And I don't think that people are willing to. Um,
Right. They want to blame somebody instead of,
yeah,
taking responsibility, taking
yeah,
their own power back. People don't realize that when you expect something of someone else, you're giving them the power over your
mm-hmm,
health
mm-hmm,
versus saying, no, I'm going to be responsible for my health and I'm going to do the research. And I know doctors get really mad at you for Googling what's
mm,
wrong with you. But, to some extent, you need to have some idea about what's happening in your body, what the potential causes could be. I mean, you shouldn't go in
mm,
and tell your doctor, this is what's wrong with me. I want you to give me something to fix it. But,
mm,
if you have some idea of how your body works and
mm,
you have some idea about what your body is trying to tell you when things are happening in your body. When you're getting pain signals, a pain signal is a signal. It's like
mm,
you should be
yeah,
investigating what's causing it and
mm,
exploring that with your doctor and giving your doctor, you get 9 minutes with a doctor, maybe.
mm, yeah,
If you go in with data and you have, take notes and tell
mm,
them, on Monday this happened, on Tuesday this happened, on Wednesday this happened, on Thursday this happened. This is what,
mm,
uh, just giving them information so that they can help you troubleshoot what's going on rather than just going in there and saying, I don't feel good and this hurts and point to
yeah,
some place on your body. It's just like, well, I don't have the time as a doctor to go through the whole litany of what that could possibly be.
mm,
To
yeah,
aspirin and call me in the morning.
yeah, yeah, and uh, there's that backlash of, well, you've not given me what I want, so I'm going to get angry at you. And especially, like in emergency departments, the amount of abuse that staff get is just unbelievable, and they're
Mhm.
just trying to help.
Yeah. And then there are also, hamstrung in that they can only help within a certain limited guidelines of what they can tell
Mm,
people about rather than, maybe you should lay off the junk food.
yeah,
That would help you a lot. But they can't say
yeah,
things like that. They can only say, well, you need to lose some weight. They can't
mm,
really say, and you should do it by XYZ.
mm,
They have to
yeah,
prescribe something.
yeah. And there's obviously that worry of if you get something wrong, if you make a mistake, you're responsible. It's a massive responsibility to have.
Mhm.
And that's where you can get moral injury, where something that you've done or something that you've not done, maybe because if you're tired, you're overworked, you've made a decision that maybe wasn't right. You're there to help people. And if you've caused harm, that causes moral injury. And that's an extreme psychological reaction that can knock people's confidence, that can lead to PTSD type symptoms, and it stays with you forever. So recovering from that is really important as well, making sure that you're getting supervision and people to back you up and things as well. That's important because the more you overwork a human being, the more likely they are to make mistakes. And that's something that I think the people in charge of money, let's face it, that's what it's all about. They need to realize that more.
Yeah, for sure. That it just you can't expect people to just be automated.
Mm,
We just don't, we aren't designed that way. And we aren't designed to work all the time. We're designed
yeah,
to have some balance in life. And the more that we've been forced into working in buildings and under supervision and in tight um, parameters of what we can do within
mm,
our profession, it makes it harder and harder for people to feel like they're still actually alive. It feels like
mm,
you're forced to become this robotic being that isn't allowed to
yeah,
have an opinion.
mm, yeah, yeah. And I think that the more we're turning into this 24/7 society where people want things straight away, that's just
Mhm.
going to get worse because people are basically on call without being on call.
Mhm.
Um, and that's a big problem as well. People don't get the opportunity to shut off anymore.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah,
And that
it's a
leads
big
to all kinds of
problem.
other abuses out
Mm,
there, with drugs and alcohol and
yeah, mm,
bad decision making.
yeah.
So how do how do people get in touch with you? And I know that you have a guide that you offer people to unlock the power of mindfulness. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, I've got a guide and it's available on my website, which is programs spelt the English way. So PROGRAMMES .EmmaLeavesley.com. I'll there'll be a link, so I don't need to spell my name. And if you go on there, there's a free downloadable guide. It's a mindfulness guide designed with healthcare professionals in mind, but it could be useful for anybody. And it's how to get mindfulness more into your everyday life. When people think of mindfulness, they tend to think of meditation, which is important and it's really good, but it's not for everybody. And if you're working in a hospital for long periods of time, fitting in meditation isn't always possible. So there's different ways other than meditation where you can give your brain a break. You're reducing that stress load temporarily, energizing yourself, and then you can go back to work. Um, so that's available there. It's free to download, and you can join my mailing list through there as well. And I have a regular newsletter with little hints and tips of how to build up healthy habits into your life.
I like that. Does it go over your for some reason in my mind I have the glitter, but the glitter stuck. It's a G word where you're catching
The
the
glimmers, yeah,
glimmer.
yeah,
Yeah. I like that a lot.
mm, yeah. So it's it's good. There's a guide there, and also I'm going to be doing a program for healthcare professionals, which is a 28-day program, a mindfulness program. And it's short exercises that are mindfulness. There'll be different exercises each day.
Mhm.
And it's it's made so that it's easy to do and it'll keep you motivated to do it because it's fun. And that will be on my website as well. And that's on demand, so you can do it at any time.
And are your workshops long or are they like bite-sized so that busy people can consume them easily and
So the workshops that I do on my programs are very short on-demand videos, and they're short for a reason. And the workshops I do are normally an hour, and on the group programs I have several different slots that you can choose from to join because obviously your shifts change and like it's to make it more accessible for attendance every week to make sure you're able to stay on top of it. The one-to-one sessions are all an hour, but I can be flexible with that. If somebody genuinely can't fit an hour in, we can do half an hour sessions.
Mhm. And do you use hypnotherapy with it? Is it-
I do use hypnotherapy. I'm only licensed to use it with the UK because of the insurance and the regulatory issues. So anyone from
Mhm.
the UK, I could do hypnotherapy with. For any overseas people, then it would just be the coaching and
Mhm.
mindfulness. And I do use some cognitive behavioral therapy techniques in there as well.
Mhm. That sounds fascinating. I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing. I think it's something that really needs to be done, and you're helping health professionals out there be able to stay in the profession, and we really do
Mm,
need people to stay in that
yeah,
profession because
I do.
where are you going to go if you get in a car accident or you break your leg or
Yeah. Mm,
the
yeah,
emergency things?
yeah.
This has
You
been
keep
so enlightening. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come and share with us what you're doing. What's the one thing you hope the audience takes away from our conversation, Emma?
that you've got to prioritize yourself. You've got to take care of yourself, and you can't leave that because it will get you if you don't. And it's really important that you work on yourself and treat yourself like a patient that needs looking after.
And that goes for everybody, not just healthcare
Mm. Yeah, it
professionals.
does. Yeah, it does.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the U World Order Showcase podcast. Remember, if you would like to be featured on this podcast as a life, health, or transformational coach, please visit www.jointheuworldorder.com. We look forward to talking to you next time as we present another life, health, or transformational coach being the change they seek in the world.